So, which one of you is younger?
Which one? What?
Which one of you is younger?
I am.
You are. Do you what's the oldest, fondest memory you have from your childhood?
My. Well, right offhand, and since it's winter weather, when we went to school, we only had a fourth of a mile to go. And the teacher, if we would be real good about starting back to the school when the first bell rang, she let us slide down the hill. It was quite a long hill. And that hill was on my folks' place where we lived. And boy, when we heard that first bell, we'd run back to school because we didn't want to have to give up that sliding over the noon hour.
So you went home for lunch then?
No.
Oh.
No, we never went home for lunch.
Oh, okay.
We took our lunch bags in a paper sack.
Yeah.
Usually.
What did you normally eat for lunch then?
What did we have for lunch?
Yeah.
Well, you had to, in the summertime, you had to take something that wouldn't spoil. So we took cheese sandwiches a lot. I don't know, in the winter, we changed off with other things. But I remember we had cheese a lot. My dad bought cheese. He bought the whole cheese. That Longhorn cheese, it's in a thing about that long.
Oh, wow.
He'd buy the whole thing. Then we'd just slice off what we needed to make sandwiches for school and whatever else needs we had for cheese.
Now, what kind of farmers were your folks?
Well, they farmed land. They had corn and oats. The farmers then had quite a few oats that they fed the cattle and horses. And they had corn, of course, cornfields. And they had hay, alfalfa hay, or clover hay. A lot of them had clover. And I remember when it come time for the 4-H, in the spring of the year, they had a thing at the school, 4-H put on, and we made a 4-H, I forget what it was called. We'd weave that clover together.
Oh.
And make a ring around, and then they'd hold certain parts of it, and there was a certain message that they said. 4-leaf clovers.
Now, did you do 4-H too, Grandpa?
Well, I can't remember any flowers involved. For recreation, we had one sled, one small sled. 5 of us would pile on that and go down, and we'd go between a telephone pole and a brace. And at night, while before we left, go home, I would get some water and ice up the track so it'd be good sliding the next day.
And none of you ever broke your necks or anything?
And we one of the kids, we had pipe railing around go up the steps, and before we went in the door, and it was up a story. One kid heard something about it would stick to that pipe when it was real cold. Well, he had to try it with his tongue.
Oh, Lord.
And he was screaming bloody murder, but we told him not to pull and could breathe on it, and it might help release it some. Well, he didn't wait long enough, and around the end of his tongue was stuck to the pipe. Do you think I'd give any idea how sore that would be?
Oh, man. You can't eat without pain. You can't do anything.
And
But you, of course, would never do something that silly or,
I think every kid did that, at least once.
oh God.
I stuck my finger like that and stuck it in the pipe. And I found out what would happen.
Now, what were these pipes for? Are they just?
It was railing
Okay.
around well, you had to come up a few steps and then you had a kind of platform but before you went in the door. And so that was, this was like, this high off the ground, so they had to put a railing around it. And that's what the pipes were for.
If you had an outside well, the pump handle was a good place to get your tongue stuck in. I can remember that.
So you didn't grow up with plumbing inside the house or anything like
No.
that?
No,
Not in those days.
No. What were your houses like?
Well, most of them were two-story because everybody had quite a few kids then. And it took that many bedrooms to hold us all. Our house, particular I remember, I think it had 4 bedrooms upstairs, and then the girls, 2 or 3, 2 always had to sleep in a bed because you couldn't have your own bed or your own bedroom because of space was limited. And
So who'd you sleep with?
uh,
Who did you sleep with?
well, I don't know. I suppose I had different bed mates, depending on, how old they were and like that. Usually the next to youngest sister or something like that. And our mattresses were denim material, striped denim material. And when they shelled corn in the fall, we had all these nice clean corn shucks off the corn. And we would stuff those, we'd sew the mattress size of the bed, and we'd stuff it full of corn shucks.
Huh.
And that was our soft bed to sleep on.
And you guys did that too?
no.
No.
What did you have for mattresses?
We had some cotton, they weren't very thick, but they were cotton mattresses. And we had to double up our upstairs. My sister slept by herself in a room upstairs, and then come around the hallway, and then there was a room, good sized room that always had 2 beds in it, and there was 2 of us to a bed.
So 4 boys in one room.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
and then I forget well, the youngest one sometimes slept someplace else for a
Where
while.
did your folks sleep?
Downstairs in the right hand side as you went in.
Didn't they have a room upstairs all at one time?
No,
They always slept in that one
Yeah.
downstairs?
yeah. And I don't know, well, as we grew up, see, my youngest brother is 12 years younger than I am.
Wow.
And he was 10 years younger than my younger brother. And then he slept with, and then he had a brother, was, let's see, Tom was 35, born in 35, and Abel was born in 29. And Walt was born he was born in 25. I was born in 23, and Bill was born in 21, and my sister was born in 20.
That's a lot of kids.
She was the oldest, and then my brother Bill was next, and then I came next, and then Walter, and then Idwell, and then Tom. My sister was a Navy nurse during World War II, and my older brother Bill was a medic in the service, and then I never passed. I wasn't physically, I didn't pass. And then my younger brother Walt was wanted to go in the Marines. So Dad signed for him. He went in 17,
Oh my gosh.
and we never saw him for 4 years. And he went through 5 different campaigns in the islands.
Oh my gosh.
He saw an awful lot of fatalities. He lost a close friend of his that they went through camp together. And he was a single boy, and him and Walt always got along, and they were going up into the mountains and, retrieving Navy flyers that got shot down and bringing their corpse back down there. And they went around the corner up on the cliff, and the Japs spotted and dumped mortars on them, and first 3 guys was killed, and there was 12 men in all. There's three stretcher team, 4 men to a stretcher, and Walt and some other guy was in there clearing the back, was the only one that didn't have any injury, and he lost his buddy, and so they picked him up and carried him down to the aid station, and took a letter and watch. They had gotten a letter from his mother that morning. He took that and his watch and billfold, and a captain stepped up, and that is a no-no. You're not supposed to take anything off of a corpse. And Walt was very shook up, and he said, he stood up and he said he had had a 45 on his hip, and he said, this captain, he said, Captain, sir, if you have a problem, we'll settle it right now. And that captain said, oh, no, just cool down.
Was he always like that?
Well, he not always like that, but that particular day he lost his buddy, and
He wanted to give these things to the boys' parents.
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to get stuff back home, make sure it got back home. And after the war was over, why, his mother lived in Kansas, and she came to our house, and she said to Walter, she says, one thing I want to know. What's that? He said, did my son suffer long? He said, no, he didn't. And
Better get back onto some other stories.
Well, I mean, what was it like for you guys? Because for us, we're in a war right now, but it's so distant. It doesn't even feel like it. How was it for you guys? I mean, was it like a daily life type of?
Well, when I was in high school, in a senior, a lot of the senior boys had to go to war before they graduated. If they turned 18 before school was out that year, they had to go into the service. So several of ours was already gone. And was kind of hard to see all that happening.
It was,
Then we'd go out and gather up iron, because they needed it for the war purposes. And we'd go out on Saturdays or after school and gather up iron that farmers would have on their place that they didn't need for anything, and then turn that in.
Where did you turn it in?
they'd melt this iron and make shells or other material out of it. My dad had a steam tractor that we gave to, it was disassembled, and it was, well, you have something, you've seen a huge tractor. They pulled it down the hill with the other tractor and put the truck that they loaded on in a ravine in a ditch. It scraped out a place where it could back this truck in, and then cut the boiler off of it. That was the longest part of the whole engine, and then rolled it on to this truck. We didn't have anything we could pick it up with, so we rolled it on, and they put down heavy pieces of lumber to roll it onto the truck bed. Then they had to cut up a lot bigger, other like wheels and things like that. The wheels on the back was stood higher than my head, and the treads were about that wide. That's what they used for thrashing. Mainly was that steam powered. Some people used them in the field, but not too many around in our area that I know of. But
That was expensive.
see, a group of farmers would own, have shares in a piece of thrashing equipment, the tractor and the separator.
When did that start? I mean, you didn't grow up with those, did you? All the time?
Well, I was very young when we first used them, but in '37, my dad got a first combine, and we pulled out with the tractor, and so we didn't have to cut and shock the oats and things like that after that.
That made life a lot easier, didn't it?
Yeah, well,
My folks always had a thrash machine come, and there was so many people, about 4 of them with hay racks, and they'd go out and pitch bales of straw onto the rack and haul it up, and then pitch it down into the thrashing machine. And I was about 8th grade, 7th or 8th grade, and I took our horse and carried water to these guys out in the field. I had a couple jugs we hung on the saddle, and I'd make my rounds, taking water out to the field and back, and to the guys running the machine and like that.
Now, that's how you guys met, right? Or, well, not when you were that young, but
Well, it was during that time
yeah.
of the year.
Now, what did you, I mean, you just kind of stayed home and helped. Was it right? How, are you the youngest?
No,
No.
I came in the middle
Oh,
of the
okay.
family.
So, I mean, after high school, what did you do?
I went to Cedar Falls to school, to college for long enough to teach in a rural school, and I did that till after we were married. And
What was that like?
Well, at the time it was nice, but when I look back, I was awfully young to go out there and have all those kids staring up at you the first day of school. I just had turned 18.
18. Oh my gosh. What was the largest classroom that you had?
Well, there was just one big room, and then you had the grades more or less. The kids sat together, like the first graders would be in the row, the front, and then go on around. The 8th grade usually sat in the back, over in the corner there. And then you just call the classes up, and they'd come up and recite, answer the questions you ask them, and I'd assign lesson for the next day, and then they go back to their seats and study.
Wow.
And I remember being in country school, and it was nice because you could sit there and listen to the kids recite and really learn some of it, of the older kids. And we had this little boy, he was a first grader. I remember when I was in country school, about in the 6th grade, I think. And the teacher was having such a time teaching his numbers. He just couldn't do it. And she'd write the number 2 on the board, or number 5, or number 10. Once in a while he'd hit it, but not too often. It was a pity, actually, because he was a child that couldn't learn, and in those days they didn't have classes for those kind of kids. And then when my kids went to school, then Kathy was telling me that up at Warren they had a boy in her class in 3rd or 4th grade that couldn't learn, and she says, Mama, she says, you know, he should have been at our other school where they had a class just for his kind. I remember her telling me that. She felt sorry for him because he couldn't learn either. But they just struggled along and learned what they could, and that was it, I guess. Till they got particular classes for them.
What was your favorite subject to teach?
What?
What was your favorite subject to teach?
Favorite subject?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know. I never cared for history too much, but it wasn't hard to teach. It was just up to through 8th grade, you know. But I never, when I went to college, I signed up for history. And I seen this great big book, thick book like that, and I thought, oh no, I don't. So I changed it. I wasn't gonna read that thing. But
So did schools only went up to 8th grade then?
yes.
And that's it?
Mm-hmm. Then you had to go to high school.
Now, did you both go to high school?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was that like a larger?
Yes, that was. Kids from all over came to that. They were bussed in.
Okay.
Buses like they are now.
Now, how far away did you guys grow up from each other?
Well, we didn't live close together until I was already teaching when I met him, and they lived how many miles down the road? 3 or 4?
Yeah, oh, let's see, 2 miles and a half.
We didn't know each other existed before that.
So you never went to school together or anything?
Oh, no.
Now, what were you doing? I mean, after high school, what did you do?
Worked on the farm. Because, well,
His brothers were all in the service.
I graduated in 41, and all my 2 brothers were in the service, and then the younger 2 got next. Edward was born in 29. He went into service, and so it was I was the only one home.
So you had to basically do all the work.
Yeah. And, I remember, well, we had corn, hay, and, cows, was calves, and, just before the war ended, why, there was a locked-in price that a fat steer would only bring so much a pound, and a hog ready for market would bring only so much a pound, and then a mature sow, or mother sow like that only bring so much. Dad went to the sale barn and bought 70 head of steers and had them hauled home, and he bought 28 mother sows that had litters of pigs, and they were just thinner than the dickens because it was suckled down so bad. And we didn't have corn for them right then, so we went out and chopped, hitched on the corn binder with the tractor, and cut bundles of green corn, and took that out in the field, small field, right south of the house, and threw it on the ground. They ate everything. They ate ears of corn, the stalks, and everything.
Oh.
The cows or the pigs?
Sows. And we got some hay for the cattle we had, and we had some corn silage in a silo with them steers that we got. And that's one of the times my dad made some real money.
I was just gonna say that's a lot of cattle.
The price on after the war was over, they had the price freeze lifted. Everything just about doubled in price.
During the war.
Really?
A lot of farmers bought land and got it paid for during the war.
Wow.
And a lot of them, they just dealt in cash. They didn't put it through the bank to have any account of it. And that's how they got so much, was because there wasn't any accounting of how much they made that they had to pay tax on.
Oh man. So I mean, you saw a big difference in the economy then, from when we were
During
kids.
the war, it was very good.
Because you basically, both of you grew up during the Depression, right?
I did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember a lot from it?
Oh yes, I do. My dad owned I don't know how he happened to go to North Dakota, but he bought 160 acres. He took, what he did, he had a male horse that he shipped up there to these people in North Dakota to use so they could breed mares and have colts. And he got this horse paid for 160 acres. And so later on, after the prices tumbled like that, we needed the money, and this woman wanted to buy this piece of ground, and he only got $10 an acre for it.
And how many acres did you grow up on then?
We grew up on 240 at home, and then there was another farm of 160 that my dad and my uncle bought together. So we had 400.
Wow.
And 37, Dad bought a new Alice Chalmers tractor. We had a hard part which was made in 29, was rather clumsy for field operation, but we did plow with it, but then he bought this Alice Chalmers, and we done putting all all the field work with that. And then also in the meantime, he had put 6 horses on a 2-plow gang. In other words, he had 6 horses, 3 side by side, and then another 3 ahead, like that. And these 6 horses pulled 1 plow. There was 2 bottoms in it, turned over 2 furrows at a time. You sat back there on the seat and put the plow in gear, drop the plow down so it start tilling the soil, turning the soil, and then raise it out when he comes in, when he made turn.
Now, did you train all these horses to do that, or
Yeah.
how many horses did you guys have?
Well, if we had put 6 on the plow,
So that was all you guys had?
no, we were working 14 head of horses in the fields.
Well, that took some money to feed 14 horses.
I was just thinking, oh my gosh.
And mine was small. My job was following 4 horses on a drag, this level knot, smooth out the fields, and walk behind. It was 4 horses pulling this drag all day long.
Oh my gosh.
Hitched them up, and then unhitched them anew and drove them to the house, and then separated them and put them in and gave them grain and water and hay. After lunch, he took them back out and hitched them, put them together on whatever they were pulling, and then took the tugs and fastened to the single trees and took off again.
What's the worst thing that ever happened while you were doing that?
Oh, I had runaway. We had a light team of, well, they weren't big ponies. They were, I would say, they weren't big riding mares, but they were bigger than ponies. They weighed 900 to 1,000 pounds. And I was raking with the side rake, and the single tree was what you put the tugs to, and there was pieces of scrap iron about that long that went to the double tree, went across like behind. Well, the rivet heads wore off in the single tree, and the one single tree went down and hit this one in the heels, and then they went lunged ahead, and then the tongue come off the end of the neck yoke come off the end of the tongue. That's what the neck yoke was, the thing that carried the tongue that guided it. And it went sideways like this and went over a creek bank, and then they broke loose and run up in the corner of the field. And a neighbor come down the road, and he went up to the house, and he told Dad, he said, you better come down there. He said, there's a team of horses up in the field trying to get out of the corner of that field. So we come down, we brought the tractor down and pulled the side rake back up out of the creek, and we hitched them back up again with another pair of single trees, and I didn't want to, I was scared out because there was no place to jump to get out of it. And so I hung on to the seat and went over the creek like that, and the tongue was sticking down in the creek. And so when after it landed in the creek, I crawled off of it then and went up back up on the bank. And he brought Doubletree down and took this pair and drove them. We pulled a side rake out of the ditch creek with a tractor, hitched them back up, and he made around. They're all right now, you can go again. I was scared.
Yeah. How old were you?
Oh, I suppose 12, 14.
Oh my gosh. Working with those big animals at that age. My gosh.
Or you got, when I first started cultivating corn and driving a team cultivating corn, you straddled a row and you had shovels on each side and handles on each side like this, and that rooted plowed the weeds out, and you left the row of corn. You straddled it, your team did. And my first team, I didn't want to cultivate because I knew I'd be there day in and out. So Dad took the team we had a big mule and a gray mare. They were broke. They knew more than I did, and they would you could drive them by G and haul. G was make a right-hand turn, haul was make a left-hand turn when you got to the end. Didn't have to touch the lines, you just spoke to them. And you'd get around and then you'd get them on the road, and then you would, another road and you go again, and he'd fix lines behind your back, and they straddle the road. You didn't have to touch the lines. The line would be around your back. Wow. You wouldn't have to touch the line because they followed this road. And I was hollering, and this team didn't know anything like that, and Dad walked down there and he says, "Let me take them around, see what the trouble is." So he got on it and spoke to them. All he did just spoke to them. They started up and didn't have to give any commands other than that at all. And he made a complete round. It wasn't a very big field, and made a complete round. He stopped again. He said, "Well, now I think it'll be all right." He got on, fixed the lines around my back. Just as I was ready to take it off, he said, "You know, it helps sometimes if the driver knows as much as the team." And I never forgot that.
Now, did you have to work on the farm too?
Yeah, but we girls seldom worked in the field.
Oh, okay.
My dad didn't believe in that, I guess.
Oh, okay.
But my job was mainly, when I was old enough, was carried water to the guys in the field. But I never plowed any corn. And when Dad planted corn, he run the corn planter and had a team of horses that pulled the planter. And when he came up at noon, boy, we were supposed to grease that corn planter wheels. You had to unscrew some things and put in grease and screw it back up. And you had feed out for his horses so that they could eat during the noon hour and be ready to go back to work at 1 o'clock. So when we saw him come up at noon, we got down there and got the planter fixed up and had it all ready for him when he wanted to go back. 2 or 3 of us run down there and do it. My brother, he run a tractor and plowed and kept the field cultivated ahead of the planter. And then after the planter, they used to use a harrow and harrow the corn in. But they've changed that a lot now. They don't even bother with that procedure. But there was a job for everybody on the farm, it seemed like. I always took the horse and went after the cows at night and got them up to the barn ready to milk. And take one of the younger kids along with me on the horse. The cows would be about a mile back in the field. And,
So what'd you do to get them? You just herded them?
pardon?
You just herded them toward the house, or?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, they'd start coming towards the house, they saw you.
Oh, okay.
Well, how do you know?
I drove enough of them.
So you had milk.
Yes, we had our own milk to drink and cook with.
And you sold that as well?
No, they didn't sell milk. They sold the cream from it. They separated it, had a separator and run it through. And then they took the skim milk and fed it to the pigs. My dad did. I don't know what they did.
A lot of people done that.
And there was a place for everything that was left over to feed it to. And the cows in the summertime grazed on the grass. In the wintertime you had to feed them corn and oats and like that.
And hay.
Lots of hay. Hay making time was a hard time because first they cut the hay and then it laid 2 or 3 days to dry. Then it was raked up and then my brother loaded it onto a wet hay rack. They pulled that up to the barn. And then they had a set of forks that they set in there and a fork-like affair, and then they closed it in and that grabbed a big chunk of hay, and whoever was leading the horse to pull it up into the barn, there's a track in the barn, and it pulled it up into the barn, and then when they hollered in the barn to stop, you stopped the horse, and then that would drop that hay down where they mount it back in the barn then. So that was a hard job. My dad did that usually, and he was just wet with perspiration when he'd come out of that hay mound.
You had a rope on this fork, and it got back to the right spot. You yanked that rope, and then released the fork like that, and it would drop the hay.
Well, that's better than hauling it up ladders.
Yeah. Right.
Now, so tell me about how you guys met. Did you like each other the first time you saw? Or who liked each other first?
We were in a Maid-Rite.
Well, the first time you seen me, I was serving the meal
Yeah, serving a meal.
when you was stacking the hay for my dad.
Stacking on straw, it wasn't a straw stack. And you asked your mom, who's that guy? Oh,
Yeah.
it said that's one of the boys that lives down the road. Harbert and boys live down the road. And she was home for the summer, and then on some weekend we'd take off. Got old enough to have a car, we'd take off and go to a different town or something like that. And I happened to go to Grinnell, and she was up there too, and we went in this Maid-Rite to have a sandwich and some pop, and I asked her for a date.
What'd she say?
Well, not right away she didn't say yes, but finally she did. And this last year we went back to that same Maid-Rite and took pictures of it.
Oh, really?
And it's still Maid-Rite, the building is still there.
We were surprised it was still there, so we went in there and had a Maid-Rite. Celebrated our, 63rd anniversary, having a Maid-Rite in there.
So did you guys date then, or did you court her? How did that work?
How did it work?
Yeah, weekends. What, Friday or Saturday night or
Well, I was teaching and I was usually away from there during the week. Then he'd come on the weekend and we'd go someplace to dance, or we didn't go to many movies. Dance usually. And then, and I went home for the weekend, and then usually on Sunday night, then he'd take me back.
Wherever she was teaching.
How far of a drive was that?
Well, there was one school that was probably up there at Sheridan, 12,
Yeah.
20 some miles
That
one way.
that was the furthest though, because those other schools, I wasn't even going with you then, and then when down there at Deep River, you didn't have to take me back to school.
No,
So there wasn't very many trips, just that one school you had to take me the furthest. But we went to dances a lot, but
What kind of music was it?
kids don't go to dances anymore, I don't think.
Eh,
oh, Lawrence Welk tunes and Guy Lombardo
Tiny Hill.
and Tiny Hill.
and it was always live music.
Then down at Deep River, they had these outside dances at night, on Friday nights, and they poured a big chunk of cement, and then they put sort of a, well, did they have a top over it or not?
Over the band players.
Just the band players. And you dance out there in the moonlight.
How romantic.
It was after the men come back from the war. The Legion got together and poured the financed, and while they had help from the business places, and they leveled off this ground and boarded up and poured this big cement floor. And there's fence around it, and then it was lit up, and that's where the Friday night dance in Deep River, that's where you went.
Was it pretty wild?
Not really. Not like it'd be now, probably.
I mean, I know that, did you guys drink alcohol or anything like that at these?
Not
very often.
not very often.
We might drink a beer, something like that, but that was about it. And that wasn't every week either.
My brother used to fill a jug with beer and put it in ice water and take it in his trunk to the dances. And he'd go out and have a snort every once in a while.
Which brother was this?
That was my older brother, Farrell. He went to a lot of dances. Took his beer jug along.
Now, I remember hearing a story about you having to drag along your younger brother on dates with you guys.
Yeah, I did
Once.
Oh, once.
and he went in the house, man, while I was waiting for Betty, and he was talking to her dad, and he got rattling off the mouth, saying he shouldn't. So I said, go on out there and sit in the car and be quiet. I don't know why I had to
Why did you have to take him?
I don't know why I had to take him. That was one and only time.
Well, Bill came with you the first time you ever had a date with me, your older brother. I wondered, gee, what's this?
Well, that
Sent the
Abel,
chaperone along.
Abel was the one I remember.
Yeah, I remember him too.
Well, Bill was like a stick of wood. He never, well,
He only came once.
yeah, he wasn't very popular with females.
Were you a gentleman then?
What?
Were you a gentleman?
I don't know what you'd have to ask her.
Oh, no, most of the time, I think. One time he came up and he had fingernail polish on his fingernails. And so the next Sunday, I asked Dad if I could take the car, and I drove around the territory and seen where his car was. So we didn't date for a while.
Oh, you broke up? I didn't know that. So why were you wearing fingernail polish?
I don't know why this gal knew that I was going with with another girl, and I stupid enough to let her put fingernail polish on my fingers.
Yeah, because you delivered the Sunday paper there and you stayed.
Did you know her?
Well, I did then, afterward.
We had a Sunday paper out, and we'd go down this little town and pick up a bundle of papers and head out through the country and deliver Des Moines Sunday Register to people on farms around the country and in the little towns too. And 50, 60 papers. Got to meet a lot of people that way.
Evidently. So how old were you guys when you first met?
Oh, I'd taught a couple years.
Were you 20 or not?
I imagine.
I was about 23 or 4.
And then you dated, and then you didn't date. And then what started it up again?
Oh, we sent his friend up to talk to me that he would never do that again if I'd just come back.
So you didn't even go yourself?
I didn't do any more swapping.
So then you guys were steady, and then did you have to ask her father for permission?
He didn't.
Oh, he didn't. But he was supposed to?
We weren't ever instructed to. I guess we probably would have if we'd been told, but we weren't.
And how did that decision get made?
What?
How did that decision get made?
Well,
It took me a while to make up my mind. I didn't know if I was ready to settle down or not.
we was at a dance in Victor.
It wasn't a yes right off the bat.
No, we were engaged either.
Do you remember asking her?
Yeah. She didn't answer right away.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, kind of on needles and pins. How long did it take it before you answered?
Not long. I think that we had already kind of talked through it all enough, and it wasn't a surprise for me. Were you surprised by it, or did you know it was coming?
I don't know, I can't remember. I can't remember for sure.
So how long were you guys engaged then before you got married?
Trying to think of where I was teaching then. With the Cranston School, I guess, and then probably a couple years.
Really? And then you guys got married in Deep River, right?
Year and a half or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got married at that church in Deep River.
And did you make your own dress or
No, I bought it.
bought it?
It was a street length dress. I didn't want a long dress. I got a street length so I could wear it someplace else. But street length dresses then weren't very long. But my sister stood up with us and his brother, and it was just a small little wedding.
And was that the first time that your guys' parents met?
Well, I don't know, probably, was it?
It could have been.
They might have, they probably knew each other. They'd have known each other, but that, back in those days, you didn't mix with all the neighbors down the road. But, we got married on a Thursday. I took Thursday and Friday off of school. Got another lady come and teach for me. And then went back to school on Monday.
So what'd you guys do after you got married? Did you go on a trip or anything like that?
No, we didn't.
And did you already have a place to live together?
We lived at his parents' for a while. That year I went to summer school, so I was gone during the week. I had to go to summer school, renew my license to teach. And then we moved into Deep River, into an apartment. And lived there till we moved to the farm.
And this is your own farm this time.
No, this was one of his dad's farms.
Oh, okay.
Up by Guernsey we lived first. And then his dad died, and then they thought they should sell one of the farms to clear up the... There was some money owed yet on one of the farms, so they sold the one we were on, and we moved then to Amana, and he worked down there in the dairy.
So how long were you a dairy farmer then?
Oh, quite a while. He was a dairy farmer,
Oh,
more than one place.
I was a dairy farmer there, and I went from there to
Bred cows.
bred cows artificially, traveled the country, lived in Webster City, and then there wasn't enough dairy cows in that area, and so I went back to another farm. I was there 3 years, and well, I tell you, you never done enough for that place. It was, they'd come out of the house at about breakfast time, and you had the cows